The meeting will begin shortly. Please find your seats. The meeting will begin momentarily. Please take your seats.
In the name of peace, democracy, and freedom for all, I stand here before you, not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people.
Freedom is not inherited. Freedom has to be conquered every day by every generation.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Poverty is the absence of all human rights. For building stable peace, we must find ways to provide opportunities for people to live decent lives.
We are young, we are here, and we don't want this. We want change. We want democracy.
After a 30-year winter of sectarian violence, Northern Ireland today has the promise of a springtime of peace.
My sisters, my daughters, my friends, find your voice.
And out of that silence came thousands of voices. Weakness, fear, and hopelessness died. Strength, power, and courage was born.
If there is one message that echoes forth from this conference, let it be that human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights once and for all.
Let us realize that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
Please welcome to the stage Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me that we've all come together, and I can feel all the energy and enthusiasm that is radiating off of all of you. I'm certainly inspired to be back at CGI, and all the reports that I'm getting about the working groups, the panels, the leaders events, all of it is incredibly encouraging. But we also arrive here with urgent fears about democracy worldwide. This is not just an American story, because around the world, autocracies now outnumber democracies for the first time in 20 years. Nearly 3/4 of the world's population today lives under autocratic regimes. In too many countries, including, sadly, right here in the United States, democracy is under siege. The polite phrase for this is democratic backsliding. But that's a euphemism that doesn't meet the moment. Let's call it what it is. It's a power grab. The rule of law isn't slipping. Leaders are sabotaging it. Rights aren't being neglected. They're being stripped. And let's be clear, no knight in shining armor is coming to save democracy. It's on all of us to save our countries and our rights. Civil society, philanthropic activists, communities of faith, companies, citizens all, we have to lead the way. That's why the CGI commitment model is more urgent than ever. This community, I think, is built for moments like this. For 20 years, CGI has brought people together to respond to crises and to create positive change that benefits people. We've built partnerships, we've tested solutions, we've learned what works, we've tried to help our partners take what works to scale. If you're in this room, we know you don't turn away from hard times or hard fights. You show up to ask, what can I do? Now, I wish we could give you a 20-minute presentation about how to save democracy in 5 easy steps. But like all things worth fighting for, it's not that simple, because we have to do many things all at once. We have to stand up for democracy in our communities. We have to defend it in the courts. We have to vote for it at the ballot box, because opponents of democracy are relentless in trying to tear it down. We must be just as relentless in renewing its promise. Because here's the bottom line truth. Democracy only survives when it delivers for people. We can't be the defenders of a broken status quo. We have to be the builders of a fairer, better, stronger, more just future. We need to be the advocates for a strong civil society that is vibrant, and we have to make sure we do everything we can to have prosperity and opportunity broadly shared. There's no quick fix for stopping authoritarianism, but there are proven ways to strengthen democracies. And many of you in this room and countless others like you across the world are doing it every day. I'm really proud that so many CGI commitments this year are leading the way. Let me highlight 3 areas in particular: fighting for truth and combating misinformation and disinformation, promoting shared prosperity, and investing in women and marginalized groups. First, truth. Our information ecosystem is broken. AI and social media are supercharging lies. Autocrats attack academia and the media, leaving people vulnerable to manipulation and deeper polarization. Many CGI community members are working to address this. Take the, for example, Isoko Center for Humanity, launched this year. It's training thousands of peace leaders to push back against lies and hate, to preserve truth and prevent violence, from Central Africa to Ukraine to right here in the United States. And this year, CGI launched a new working group on truth and information, and a special session on our leaders stage to bring smart, dedicated partners together to meet this challenge. Because democracy requires a free media and the responsible use of technology. Second, economic opportunity. When people see the system as rigged, they turn to strongmen. But when they see real opportunity through jobs, education, entrepreneurship, they see democracy deliver. And they see a better path for themselves and their children. That's why I'm so excited by the work of commitment maker Yosel and what they're doing in Liberia. They're doubling the reach of their social entrepreneurship school, training young people and women to start businesses, create jobs, and build better futures. By replacing despair with opportunity, they're proving that economic empowerment is one of the strongest defenses of democracy. And later in this plenary session, you'll hear from Hamdi Ulukaya, who is working with Governor Kathy Hochul of New York to create economic opportunities and jobs in places without them in upstate New York. Third, women. Attacks on democracy are almost always presaged by attacks on women. From suffrage to civil rights movements, women's participation has fueled democracy's progress. And when autocrats move to suppress democracy, they target women. They roll back legal protections, they dismantle comprehensive health care, and they confine women or urge that women be confined to the home. As you saw from the movie, 30 years ago, I stood on a stage in Beijing and said something which is, I hope, self-evident. You know, human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. And this week, as part of a CGI commitment to action, Columbia University's Institute of Global Politics and Global Women's Voices from the Global Women's Leadership Network released this report outlining the policy priorities critical to meeting modern challenges to further the Beijing platform that was adopted by 189 countries so that we can build on the progress that's been made, stop the backsliding, and move forward. Because the report is both a prescription for the future and a call to action. The takeaway is clear. If you're fighting for democracy, you're fighting for women. And if you're fighting for women, you're fighting for democracy. They go hand in hand. At CGI, we have a working group on democracy and human rights, and that work matters across our commitments in every area. Because there is no one formula, as I said, to save democracy, but there are plenty of places to start. And everywhere I look at CGI, I meet and see people who are stepping up. Now, it's true that autocrats and strong men make the headlines and the evening news, but step away from the screens and look around, and you'll see organizations, activists, nonprofits, cities, states, religious organizations, all doing work that represents the best of our humanity. I really believe that any problem we face, there's somebody somewhere who is working to solve it. You know, my husband likes to say there's nothing wrong with America that can't be cured by what's right with America. I think that's true about our whole world. And here at CGI, we know that what's wrong with the world can't be just ignored if we expect to make progress anywhere else. We have to look at ways to bring people together around tables like those here at CGI to roll up our sleeves to make a difference. CGI has never been just a conference. It's always been a catalyst for change. And it's easy to forget, 2 decades on, how kind of radical this idea was. How anybody could come up with an idea for a conference where you just didn't come, meet people, listen to speakers, and go home, but you came because you were willing to make a commitment. It's been transformative for philanthropy, for families, for communities. And I think today, CGI is a model of what we should be doing with collective action as well as collective commitment. And so when you think about why you're here, I hope you keep that in mind for the weeks and months ahead. Because even in these challenging times, I believe there are more people who want to build a just and prosperous future than there are people who want to tear it down. Yet we need all of us to stand together, shoulder to shoulder, with people who are doing the hard work literally around the world, who are ensuring that people in war zones and conflicts, people fleeing from the effects of climate change, people living under tyranny are having some linkage to what is possible for the future. I think that those of us who try to build platforms for change, communities of doers, it's our job to carry that energy and that commitment back into the world. You know, I really do believe it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I think it takes a great big village to save democracy. We are that village, so we have to step up every day, and we have to look for ways to take this spirit of CGI back out into the communities we come from. Now, there's somebody here today who has been making a real difference for people for a very long time, who has used her platform, who has used her voice, who has exercised the responsibility of making change everywhere she's been. She has fought for democracy, she has fought for freedom. She's been a long-time friend and partner. And as the first woman elected president of any nation in Africa, she helped to steer her country through the aftermath of a terrible conflict. It's really important to me that her words, her example, her continuing work be understood in the context of the courage that it took her to do it. This is not a time for those who are weak of heart to take on what we're up against. We need champions, we need warriors, we need women like this woman I'm about to introduce. With her is her granddaughter, Janelle, who's helping to carry on her legacy into the next generation. Please join me in welcoming President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Janelle Sirleaf.
President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, friends, it is a pleasure to be with you on this special occasion. For 20 years, the Clinton Global Initiative has stood as a leading conveyor of pioneers, change makers, and global citizens. This anniversary also marks a personal milestone. 20 years since I became the first woman to be democratically elected president. Thank you. Thank you. In Liberia, and the first in Africa. It was nearly 2 decades ago that I stood on this stage with President Clinton, alongside partners such as Humanity United, the Novo Foundation, and others, to pledge support for Liberia's reconstruction after 14 years of civil war. From that commitment grew the Liberian Philanthropic Secretariat, an enduring legacy of GCI's power to turn vision into action. I'm often asked to speak on the importance of women and democracy, and I'm constantly reminded of why I have dedicated myself since leaving public office to ensuring women are given a fair and equal chance to lead their countries, businesses, and communities. Women are not only critical to democracy, they are indispensable. Democracies cannot function without the inclusion and equal participation of women. Their role as voters, candidates, and elected leaders underpins societies in so many ways. Societies thrive when they champion women. Women thrive when encouraged to participate, raise their voice, and lead. My own leadership journey was the catalyst for establishing the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf Presidential Center for Women and Development. With this flagship program, the Amuje Initiative, dedicated to creating a pipeline of African women public leaders by supporting, nurturing, and mentoring young women who have already made their marks in public leadership. I help them stand on my shoulders, just as I stood on the shoulders of the women leaders who came before me. While Africa is trending in the right direction, the full and unfettered participation of women in public life remains an aspiration. This is a critical moment to reflect on how far we have come and how many road there is to travel.
Five years ago, the EJS Center was launched with a vision to champion women's public leadership across Africa by shifting narratives and fostering an enabling environment where women can lead at the highest levels. Since then, we have grown the Amuje Leaders Network to more than 50 women, produced transparent data to inform policy and decision-making, and forged partnerships to ensure that future generations understand the pivotal role women have played and continue to play in shaping public life and governance. At the heart of this journey is a commitment to honoring the legacy of women leaders and supporting those who are leading today. Every day, I'm inspired not only by the story of my grandmother, but also by the extraordinary women we work alongside, leaders whose courage, determination, and service transform their communities, their countries, and the world. It is their example that continues to guide our mission to ensure women's voices are heard and their stories celebrated. Our commitment to action is to build Africa's first presidential center for women leaders.
Thank you.
Africa Women's House. This will be a physical space that honors the service of women leaders and acts as a global focal point for change. It'll be the foundation of our work, expanding programs like the Amuje Initiative, which we aim to grow to 100 women by 2028. Located in Liberia, the Africa Women's House will host convenings, archives, and exhibitions that preserve and celebrate the legacy of women leaders, inspiring the next generation. To our partners, thank you for supporting us in making this vision a reality. We invite each of you to stay engaged, champion our mission, and continue working alongside us to achieve gender equality in public leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Put the lights on.
Please welcome to the stage Mete Koban, Justice Horn, and Lindiwe Mazibuko.
I'm Lindiwe Mazibuko, former leader of the official opposition in South Africa's parliament and founder of Future Elect, an organization transforming the political engagement of women and young people across Africa. For many, politics has become synonymous with incompetence, corruption, and being out of touch. On the African continent, the numbers tell a depressing story. The halls of power are often dominated by a particular kind of leader, older, male, wealthy. 60% of Africans are under the age of 25, yet the median age of its leaders is 63. Women, comprising over half the continent's population, hold only 27% of its parliamentary seats. Throughout my time in politics, I have witnessed many admirable women enter the space with optimism and hope, only to be worn down by solitude, persistent criticism, and a loss of motivation because the system failed to nourish and support them. Earlier this year, Future Elect collaborated on a Cost of Politics in South Africa report, revealing the financial burden of running for elected office, as well as its social and emotional cost. One candidate said, "Running for office is expensive, but for women, it's more than money. It's safety, family, respectability. It's fighting battles men don't even see." Despite these challenges, I still believe politics is beautiful and that good people remain at the heart of it. Effective leadership begins and ends with character and integrity. To lead others, you must first learn to lead yourself. We can rebuild democracy by nurturing great leaders and by empowering active citizens to hold them accountable. Politically aware, engaged citizens can make informed decisions to support high-quality candidates, reversing the effects of the aging, ethically compromised, incumbent political class. When we talk about putting people first in politics, we usually mean citizens, but that's only part of the story. Politicians are people too, with fears, vulnerabilities, and blind spots. They also need our support. So, if you want to save democracy, you must prioritize supporting new leaders with the tools they need to lead with integrity. Only then can we rebuild trust in governance and make politics a noble calling where ethical leadership thrives.
My name is Mete. My name is Mete Koban, and I'm the Deputy Mayor of London for Environment and Energy. Let's be honest, people like me aren't supposed to be in politics. Being raised on one of London's poorest council estates, I didn't grow up wanting to be a politician, or even thinking that it might be a nice career choice. I came to politics the hard way, because from a young age, I learned that if you don't do politics, politics will do you. When I was 15, my local youth club was shut down. My community didn't have the power, resources, or connections to save it. And overnight, kids like me from working class immigrant backgrounds lost our lifeline. That's when we realized, if we want change, no one is going to hand it to us. We've got to demand change. But for too many young people, politics feels distant, unwelcoming, and let's be honest, sometimes pointless. In 2019, nearly 40% of young people believed that their vote didn't matter. By 2025, we're facing a climate breakdown, rising living costs, insecure jobs, and the low shadow of a pandemic that has stolen years of opportunity. That's why I founded My Life, My Say, to put politics back into the hands of young people, organizing young people and the next generation to shape the future of their neighborhoods, registering voters, and showing up where young people live, work, and hang out. When a general election was called last year, we launched the most ambitious youth participation drive in our history. We went to where young people already were, on dating apps, in cinemas, across transport networks, and on the brands that they trust. It genuinely felt organic, authentic, and truly youth-led. And it worked. It was the most successful youth voter registration drive in the UK's history, registering 488,846 young voters in just 6 weeks. But we didn't just register voters. We registered a movement built by young people for young people. So if you want to save our democracy, start with the people who are most affected. Make sure that their voices are heard so everyone's voices are heard. Thank you.
My name is Justice Horn, and I'm a proud Missourian from Jackson County, home to Kansas City. I currently serve as student body president at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. When I ask my classmates what's the #1 thing they look for in a candidate, the answer is simple: who's fighting for me? Before returning to grad school, I worked with the Department of Energy on a workforce development project. I saw firsthand how communities across Missouri and Kansas were being left behind. When people's livelihoods are taken away, they lose their dignity, their pride, and their belief they can build a better life. When funding cuts impacted my job, I knew I couldn't walk away from the work. I had to keep fighting for not only the Black, Native, the LGBT community, or for young people, but for farmers, union workers, and anyone who has been left behind. I fight for forgotten America. Every day, I knock on a door and talk to someone who feels forgotten. That's why I knock, to make sure they know they're heard and someone they can trust is in their corner. You know, imagine if we all took the time to knock on a door, to listen, and to build a real community together. You know, social media is great, but it can't replace knowing your neighbor. It's hard to hate someone you know when they're standing on your front porch. So if you want to save democracy, stand up, show up, and fight for each other, because our future depends on it. Our future depends on a multiracial, multi-generational movement made up of all Americans seeking a brighter future. When we build movements around people, no political power can shake us. There are brighter days ahead, and it's up to each and every one of us to find ways to get there together. Thank you, everyone.
We can't say for certain what tomorrow will bring. But we know that what unites us leads us in common purpose.
We have to keep proving every single day that our common humanity is more important than our differences.
CGI has come together year after year with the idea that there are solutions out there that have the power to change the world.
What if I told you that I had a $100 billion idea? A simple idea, one that would lift millions of families out of poverty.
And that these solutions can be translated into action.
We're really rebuilding our infrastructure. We're investing in people.
We make commitments to improve the world today in hopes of achieving a better tomorrow.
We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children.
We know that our collective action works. We know that one idea in one community can upend the way things have been done. We know that if we look around and find ways to partner with one another, we can multiply our efforts.
I'm going to keep going, and I hope that you will walk beside me.
For in this world of endless challenges,
if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Never stop thinking about tomorrow.
Please welcome to the stage Hamdi Ulukaya and Margaret Hoover.
Hamdi Ulukaya, you are the CEO of Chobani. You are collaborating with the state of New York on a new $1.2 billion dairy producing plant in Rome, Oneida County. This project is the largest ever investment in natural food production in the United States. Will create way more than 1,000 jobs, I've been told. 1,000 is a low number. And is bolstering the New York dairy economy.
Yeah.
Why, in the midst of the economic uncertainty that is 2025, and why are you doing this now?
Yeah.
And why are you doing it in Rome?
Oh, that's it. First of all, I'm so honored to be with you and so honored to be here. And may I have 1 minute on just one topic? I've been coming here, Margaret, for the last, I don't know how many years. And every year I come here, I leave with something in my pocket, in my heart, in my mind, that takes it, I look forward for until the next year to be here. And I hope that everybody who comes here gets the same thing. But I can't thank President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, and my dear sister Chelsea. Continue to do this, and for us to be able to come together and engage with each other, interact with each other, and for us to be able to tell stories. And my stories, I end up here in, with $3,000 in my pocket, with no word of English. And 2 months after New York City, I found myself in upstate New York. And the minute I stepped into upstate New York, I felt like I was home. So I come from the eastern part of Turkey. And the land, the way the people are, the communities, it felt like similar to. New York was completely different to me. So to me, New York is home. Upstate New York is home. And when I felt home, when I started Chobani in upstate New York, we'll talk about it a little bit later, I lived in Utica. And I drove 30 minutes to South Edmonston, where our factory was. So I know the community. So Rome, for me, is home. So going to Rome and investing in this project is like one of the most proud moments for me. The second reason is we're growing. We're growing almost 30%. So people want to eat more yogurt, more Chobanis. So it's a good thing. We are innovating, we're growing. The third thing is, and I think the future is bright. The future of this country, future of this state, and the future of humanity is bright. And I look way beyond the conversation, what it is today, and obstacles and challenges that we see today. And based on what I have been through, and I've been through hell, this is nothing.
Well, so let's go there for a second. Those of us who know your story,
yeah,
and who are familiar with how you came to found Chobani, as you just referenced, you founded it with not much capital in your back pocket. You had an SBA loan,
yep,
and you bought a huge dairy production facility, and you didn't know how to start a yogurt company.
No. I didn't know how to start anything. I mean, I'm a nomad. I don't know much.
And so, one of the first things you did with your 4 employees was to paint the walls,
yeah,
of the dairy production,
yeah,
structure. Like literally paint the walls.
Yeah.
And this has become a mantra for you. If you don't know what to do,
you just start
you paint the walls.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing this up. And it's a true story. So I walk into this old factory, and I've been telling this story for 15 years, so I continue to tell you. But I walk into this factory, and it's 70 years old at the time, owned by a large food company, and they closed it. And there was 55 people working in that factory. Mm-hmm. And they said that this steam from this roof never stopped. It was always working. It was the bread and butter of this community. Everybody depended on this place. And when that time came that finally that they shut it down, they thought it was the end. It was finished. And I saw an ad that this place was for sale, and I walked in, and then Rich Lake, who was the production manager, they showed me around, and when I walked out and I said I was gonna buy it, so finally I got it. The first thing I did is hire the 4 people from that 55. And we had the first board meeting with these 4 people. One is the wastewater guy, maintenance guy, production guy, and Maria, who was answering the call, and myself. And we are having this first board meeting, called board meeting. So it's like, Hamdi, what are we going to do now? So I have no money, I have no experience, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I have this old factory. They're looking at me as if I have all the answers. The only thing I can think of, the only thing, is the walls outside was white at some point, but it's no longer. And it bothers me, and I can do something about it. So I said, Mike, we're going to go to Ace Hardware store, and we're going to buy some paints. And we're going to paint the walls outside. So Mike is this Harley bike rider, and he's this guy, and he's an old guy. He's retired, he came back. He said, Hamdi, I retired from this factory. Those walls never been painted in the last 25 years, at least I know. Tell me you have more ideas than that. So these 4 people are looking at me as if I have the answers so they can make life decisions whether they stay in that town or they move away. And the only thing that can come out of me is paint the walls. So I said, of course I have more ideas, but let's do this first. And that's the summer we paint those walls. And those walls are still painted. They're still there. I mean, I came up with the design, blue, white, whatever. 4 of us, we painted those walls in a very disturbed, disrupted, dead, finished place. And I have no other ideas. A year and a half after that place, I launched Chobani. Year and a half later than those painting walls, I launched Chobani. 5 years later, I had 1,000 people working there, and I had $1 billion in sales, and I had not even raised 1 penny for capital, and we figured out how to do it. Okay. So my motto has always been, you know, you might not know what to do next, you might not have all the resources, you might have a whole world is coming to the end, but there's one thing you always figure out what to do, whether it's small or big. Instead of sitting down and wondering what to do, let's move, let's do something. And we say, let's start painting the walls.
It's a wonderful anecdote, and you raised it with me backstage as we were talking, because there is a feeling of pessimism amongst some these days, right? There is, you know, a sense that we're moving backwards in some areas, especially in the context of global aid, in the context of international relations. I mean, there is a lot to be upset and concerned about. Yes, and you said, but I have seen darkness. And I have also seen the moments that people said were their darkest become the thing that led to their brightest in the context of the creation of your company. So what I know is also backstage you showed me plans for this new plant, which include, it is a Air Force Base, Griffiths Air Force Base, which was bracked in 1995, and will turn into a massive ecosystem for work development, for natural food production, and for thousands of jobs in upstate New York. So what does that public-private partnership look like? I understand it is the county level, the state level, the city level. Talk about how that ecosystem is being created.
Thank you for that. I got from the, you said it so beautifully. It's challenging times. We're passing through from the things that we care about, especially what talked about in this place every year. And I go back to that day when I walk into that factory and looking at those 55 people in silence in that place with dignity closing that factory. And I look at to them and they thought this was the end, this was the finished. And if you ask people that day, what was the worst thing ever happened to this community? They would have said, closing this factory was the worst thing ever happened. 5 years later, if you ask them what was the best thing ever happened to that community, they would have said closing that factory. The reason I'm saying that is every challenge, and you said this similarly beautifully, every challenge is very hard to go through, but it's an opportunity to make things extremely better than ever before. It has an enormous amount of opportunity in there. The only difference is the just one step ahead of the other step, day by day, cup by cup, minute by minute. And that requires this discipline of insisting, not giving up. And also every act is big enough. You know, I always said, like, yesterday I was clever, I wanted to save the world. Today I'm wise, I want to save me. You know, that's Rumi. And we have to think about these things and say, where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? What was wrong? I mean, in that factory, the people weren't wrong, the community wasn't wrong, God, the product wasn't wrong. They were making yogurt. Maybe the approach wasn't wrong. Maybe they didn't have a good painter to paint the outside, you know?
Apparently you don't need a painter.
Yeah, and so now we're looking at Rome. After that, I went all the way to Idaho, and I built one of the largest factories in Idaho. Now it's fully, you know, production. And I'm coming back home to Rome and building this factory. I'm a big fan of building factories. You know, I just love building factories. But then I'm a big fan of watching people work and making life for themselves. And then you'll watch how the ecosystems start working, the farmers, the truck drivers, and the diner owners, and everyone coming together. And you see this magic happens in a very quick way. It's like a bee house. I have to give the local community upstate New York, the Rome, city of Rome, you know, Utica and Herkimer County, Utica, and our governor and federal government as well. I mean, this is one project that I see everyone come together and put it together. And we're going to break ground very soon and seeing that where the heroes, you know, the Air Force Base, and turning into this, you know, this beautiful facility. Then you look at it and I say, what's the magic of this country? You know, I came here as student and 22 years old with no money, no language, no degree, nothing, you know? And I found a home in a farm in upstate New York, and here I am. I'm just like, what can I do for this country? What can I do to serve? What can I do? Like, it's not a sense of payback, but how can I make sure that this dream lives on? You know? And that is the part that you find all across the countries, above and beyond all the noises. There's these relationships to be built, the partnerships to be built, acts to happen, and get to know to happen. And I think we have to, you know, reach a little bit longer, think a little bit deeper, work a little bit harder, and maybe remove some of those, you know, headlines and meet in the humanity level.
One of the things you talk about that ecosystem, and it is the case, as I understand it, that your employees at Chobani are shareholders of your company.
Yes.
It is also the case that at times up to 30% of your workforce has been refugees who you have employed.
Yep.
You have not shied from controversy in this regard.
No.
What are you doing to recruit, train, and retain local workers upstate? Because I understand there's an effort with veterans.
Yeah.
There's an effort for students and rural residents.
Yeah. Everyone welcome. I love this motion of come whoever you are and wherever you are, and let's do this together. And my effort on refugees started in the Rome, you know, Utica area. And when I hired everybody back and I learned that people were settling in Utica, they were coming from all across the world as, you know, challenging places, and legally settled and wanted to work when they couldn't find jobs. And I said, well, come. They said, well, they don't have driver license. I said, well, we'll get some buses and we'll rent some cars. And they said they didn't speak English. I said, well, so don't I. Like, I don't, you know. So that's not a big deal. They didn't have the training. Well, we'll train it together. And people work shoulder to shoulder. And, you know, we have 26 languages spoken in our company. And every single person is shareholder and partner, and I truly believe that people, especially in manufacturing and rural communities, that contributes to the success of the companies should have a stake on the success of the company. So I can't wait for them to, to access that in some transaction.
And to bring it back to the Clinton Global Initiative, it is my understanding that your inspiration to begin reaching out and employing refugees came from this conference.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me more.
It's President Clinton who took me to the rooms to introduce to the business owners, because I had this experience at Chobani that those refugees that came from Utica to work in the factory, it wasn't a handout, it was just an opportunity for them to have a job, Margaret. And then you watch them, that access to job is bring the dignity back. They stand on their own feet, they provide to their family members and community and society. And then I realized that the minute refugee has the job, that's the minute they stop being a refugee. That's the minute they become, part of the community. And I said, well, I gotta tell everybody about this. This is a magical thing. So I wanted to start tent, and I didn't know how. And this at CGI, I learned.
So explain what tent is.
Tent is mobilizing business communities to come together to hire and train and advocate for refugees. And this started in 2016. And today we have over 500 global companies. We are organized in Europe and South America. I was just in Mexico last week.
Who are hiring refugees because of this effort. So you've placed over hundreds of thousands of refugees in companies around the world.
Yes.
Because of an effort here at CGI.
And the part is, it's a win-win-win-win in all dimensions. You have, of course, refugees, they have an access to work. The companies win, you have the most dedicated workforce you can ever find of. And the community and society wins. You know what it is. I mean, this country is full of stories like this. I'm not telling something new. But it was from the company's perspective, it was no-brainer. And every economical marketing or branding studies and the stories, it proves that within a few years, your contribution is plus.
Hamdi Ulukaya, thank you for sharing your story.
I'm so honored.
Come back and tell us what you've done next year.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage, Loon Vio.
Thank you. I join you today as a proud Haitian American who has spent the past 35 years living and working in Haiti with Partners in Health and our Haitian sister organization, Zame la Santé, providing health care, food, and education to those who need them most. When I wake up on the morning of January 12, 2010, I had no idea my life will change forever. In the moments following the earthquake, once I was rescued, my attention immediately turned to ensuring our teams were safe and had the resources they need to save lives. Within weeks, the CGI Haiti Action Network sprang into action. They fostered partnerships across sectors to administer healthcare, build temporary shelters, and provide food and clean water. I will never forget the incredible pragmatic solidarity of the Haiti Action Network, many of whom continue to support us, to support our work, and who I see in the room today. When I visited the severely damaged hospital in Port-au-Prince, I found many children and young adults with profound disabilities who heartbreakingly were abandoned by parents who couldn't care for them. I knew I had to do something. We founded Zami Beni, which means blessed friends in Haitian Creole, on the belief that every child deserves love, security, and the opportunity to flourish. Today, we remain home to 64 children and young adults. Zami Beni is more than a residence. a sanctuary in the midst of challenges Haiti continues to endure. We are one big family that blends care, love, and dignity with opportunities to grow. Friendships blossom over shared meals, birthdays are celebrated, and medical care is tailored to the unique needs of every child. Despite their disabilities and painful histories, every child is recognized for their potential, not their limitations. Zami Beni embodies what Partners in Health stands for: meeting the needs of the most vulnerable, offering them a chance at life, and working with them on their journey. Even in Haiti's most difficult circumstances, Zami Beni remains an oasis of hope and a model of what is possible. In today's world, it is easy to become paralyzed by grief and despair. Our children have taught me that in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, we must not become cynical, and instead, we must act with moral clarity. As my friend Paul used to say, this means you are in front of someone who is suffering, and you have the tools to alleviate it, and you act. As we navigate the uncertainty in the world today, the legacy of CGI is the lives that have been changed by this community of leaders who have led and are continuing to lead with love, peace, and hope. I encourage all of us to continue to put people first in every action we take. And as we say in Haitian Creole, tout moun c'est moun. Everyone is human, deserving of dignity and rights. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Chethan Sathya, Noe Romo, and Nicole Hockley.
Good afternoon. My name is Chethan Sathya. I'm a pediatric surgeon, and I'm the director of the Northwell Health Center for Gun Violence Prevention. What if the next time you went to a doctor, in addition to being asked about your lifestyle, exercise, smoking, substance use, you get asked whether or not you store your firearms safely, whether or not you've heard gunshots in the last 6 months or had a gun pulled on you. As a pediatric trauma surgeon, I operate on kids who have been shot. Just this week, at our Level 1 Trauma Center, we had yet another child not too far from here shot in the head. And that child just passed away this morning. A few years ago, our health system recognized something that my colleagues and I have seen every day, that gun violence is a major, major public health crisis in this country, and that healthcare has to do more. Healthcare has to do more to prevent gunshots in children and not just leave it up to us to operate. And the urgency of this issue could not be more palpable. Guns continue to be the leading cause of death among kids in this country, and that is not going to change for the next 5 to 10 years. Last year, Northwell Health, the largest health system in New York, announced a CGI commitment to expand evidence-based public health interventions to prevent gun injuries in this country, namely our first of its kind universal screening program, where we ask every patient about gun violence risk, almost like an additional vital sign. By asking a few simple questions, we've been increasing safe storage of firearms and breaking cycles of violence throughout the communities we serve. So far, because of many of my colleagues in the room and our leadership at Northwell, we've screened over 300,000 patients, and we've brought down gun violence rates in the communities that we treat. We've also had the opportunity to bring together 600 hospitals across the country focused on this topic and work with the Ad Council to launch a new national public awareness campaign. I can tell you, after years of working on this issue and talking to thousands of families, I have yet to meet one American family, one, who doesn't want the same thing: less violence, no mass shootings, and the safety of their kids. There is common ground. And day after day, when we are in the operating room, pulling bullets out of a child's body, the room suddenly goes silent, and we know that that life is slipping away. At that moment, political and ideological differences go out the window. To that family and those children, all that matters is that they survive. So our work is very deeply rooted in the idea of collective action. It's going to take all of us to solve this crisis. We look forward to building on the progress that we've made last year and continuing to try to save lives one conversation at a time. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Noe Romo, and I serve as medical director of our New York State SNUG Hospital Violence Intervention Programs in the Division of Criminal Justice Services in the state of New York. Firearm-related injury is a leading cause of death for U.S. children. This reality was recently highlighted by the mass shooting in a Catholic school in Minnesota. Although tragic in its own right, similar unfortunate events happen daily all over this country, but don't attract nearly as much attention. Recently, there were 2 mass shootings in one Bronx community over a 10-day period in late summer of this year. All 12 adult and pediatric victims, including 3 mortalities, were brought to New York City Health and Hospitals Jacobi in the Bronx, where I serve as medical director for our hospital violence intervention program, Stand Up to Violence. The human cost of violent trauma was never more evident than when I was tasked with helping a grieving mother accept the unimaginable reality of her young child's death. The newly purchased sneakers and matching outfit for his first day of school would remain unworn and as fresh as his mother's grief. At our hospital violence intervention program in the Bronx, we have applied a data-driven, evidence-based, multidisciplinary approach to the treatment of violent trauma. This public health model utilizes social workers, physicians, community outreach workers, and hospital responders to improve both violent trauma and patient high-risk community participant outcomes. We have been successful locally in the Bronx, and the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services has supported our expansion to 4 additional hospitals across the state of New York. Since launching our commitment to action last year, we have served over 1,400 patients, and our re-injury rate is 2.4%, which is well below the national average of 15 to 35% of violent trauma patients. We have connected violent trauma patients to supportive services and community resources to help heal their physical, emotional, and socioeconomic wounds. But our work is nowhere near done. We cannot stand idly by and allow the preventable cause of firearm-related injury to be the leading cause of childhood death in this country. We will continue to expand to communities in need. We will continue to amplify available service to violent trauma patients and high-risk community participants. We will continue until there is not a single parent in New York State denied the joy that is of sending your child off to their first day of school. Thank you.
My name is Nicole Hockley, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Sandy Hook Promise, an organization I helped launch after my youngest son was killed at Sandy Hook School. Every child deserves to walk into school feeling safe, not carrying the fear of gun violence. Yet in America, that fear is far too real. At Sandy Hook Promise, we believe no child should live this way. That is why, through our Clinton Global Initiative Commitment to Action, we set out to expand our Promise Leader program in the southern states most affected by gun deaths: Texas, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Promise Leaders are adult mentors and advocates who bring proven violence prevention tools and education into their own schools and communities to stop violence before it starts. In just a few short months, we've grown Promise Leader engagement by over 7%. Across Georgia, we're mobilizing more than 1,400 volunteers to support implementation of bipartisan legislation which requires violence and suicide prevention training and youth-led safety programs in schools. In Texas, Neighbors of every background, gun owner or not, are coming together in community workshops, united by one goal: to keep kids safe. And in Kentucky, Promise leaders are meeting with their elected officials, sharing local stories of rising suicide rates, and calling for urgent solutions to save their neighbors' lives. Our next step is to replicate this model in more states, diversifying and strengthening the chorus of voices demanding safe schools and safe futures for children. We know the crisis is urgent, but the solution is within reach because of the passion of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Together, we can build a powerful, inclusive movement to end gun violence and ensure every child has the chance to grow up. I invite all of you to join us in building a future where no child lives in fear. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Deepak Bhargava, Audrey Tang, and Dr. Chelsea Clinton.
Thank you again for that warm welcome. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, though before we begin, as I was just saying to Audrey, to the ambassador, I'm just so sorry for the terrible tragedy that Taiwan has confronted with the horrific storms. And so really, before we kind of began this conversation, wanted to extend our sympathies and to acknowledge what your country's going through. We heard earlier this morning Maria Ressa say that these days everything is downstream from information, and that mis and disinformation are upstream from so many of the kind of conversations, the debates that we're having, whether around kind of global health or climate change. You know, Audrey, I wonder if we can turn to you and you can share, while I see you nodding, you are still an optimist about technology and kind of what work you're doing in Taiwan to try to protect and mitigate harms, and also simultaneously use technology as a force for good.
Certainly. In Taiwan, we have weathered this sort of storms and typhoons, including the cyber attacks, the literally called Vo typhoons and Sol typhoons, and also polarization attacks, malicious AI swarms, generative propaganda, and so on, for the past 12 years, according to VDEM. And 12 years ago, it was pretty bad. Taiwan was very polarized. The trust in the democratic institutions were crumbling. The president in 2014 was enjoying 9% of approval rates. And so in a country of 24 million people, that's 20 million people automatically against whatever the government says. And so we were able to overcome this polarization by doing something very simple, which is to find the uncommon ground. In 2014, 500,000 people went to the streets and many more online to protest against the trade deal that we were about to sign with Beijing. But instead of just protesting against something, we demonstrated for a system where anybody on the street can talk what they feel about the trade deal. And then an AI system that is not trained on maximizing engagement through enragement, but rather trained on civic care, summarize these ideas into common knowledge. So every day we say to the people what was agreed the previous day, what was remaining to be deliberated, and after 3 weeks we converged so that we have a package of ideas about the trade deal that leaves everybody slightly happier and nobody very unhappy, and this was passed. And so after hundreds of times doing this kind of broad listening, uncommon ground building, by 2020, the approval rate is back at more than 70%, and today the BTI rates Taiwan more than 90% of Taiwanese people think democracy is at least fairly good.
Yes. Deepak, you've written and spoken about kind of the crisis that we have in civic engagement, in civic life, and kind of the connection between those crises and democracy. We heard my mom earlier reflect that for the first time in more than 2 decades, more people are living in non-democratic systems than living in democratic systems. How do you think technology plays a role in moving us forward to hopefully a healthier civic life, whether it's in kind of a reaction to a particular moment, like we heard from Audrey, or in the most wonderful sense, kind of the banality of every day?
Well, thanks for the question. And I think what I'd reflect is that democracy as a political system is losing legitimacy and is imperiled in part because people do not have a sense of agency and a lived experience of democracy in their everyday lives. And I've been focused on the kind of in real life part of that problem more than the tech side of that problem. And as I see it, in the United States, we've had a titanic erosion of the kinds of civic organizations that give people that everyday sense of participation and meaning. Church participation, community organizations and civic organizations, places where you might meet people who come from a different background than you, who come from a different neighborhood, who don't have the same political views, and you have to figure out how to kind of interact and work together. That atomization is a huge part of the crises of loneliness, of isolation, of despair, that I think is driving our small d democratic crisis. I'd also point to the dramatic decline in the labor movement throughout the world. In the United States, we've gone from 35% of people, workers, being part of a union, down to 6%. So the consequence is that most people go to work and they have an experience of having authoritarianism every day, having very little power on the job. So democracy can't just be an experience we have every 2 years or 4 years. As important as voting is, it has to be an experience we have every day in our lives. So at the Freedom Together Foundation, we've made a generational commitment to invest in rebuilding that kind of social, organizational infrastructure to give people a tangible experience of what it's like to negotiate, to take action, to set an agenda with your neighbors. And I think one of the bright spots of this moment for me is that out of this crisis we're in, I think we are beginning to see an upsurge in participation and civic engagement, that in a way this is the biggest organizing opportunity of my lifetime. Whether it's veterans experiencing the pain of cuts in the VA, or parents experiencing the pain of cuts in the education system, or the family and friends and co-workers and co-parishioners of immigrants who are living in fear of what's going to happen to their loved ones. Out of this crucible of crisis, we can rebuild a civil society in this country that can undergird a much healthier and stronger democracy than what we had before.
Deepak, I tell my children our family's not a democracy. That their voices always matter, but they don't have a vote. And yet, I expect them to be citizens every day. Like citizens in our family, citizens at school, citizens in our faith community, citizens in their extracurricular activities, citizens when we're walking down the street, in the grocery store, on the subway. And I don't want that to be a privilege in our country. So I think the decisive sense of we need to authentically catalyze and yet then really purposefully build community is so vitally important. And Audrey, I know you talked about what happened a dozen years ago. You also though referenced it's not as if sustained cyber attacks or cyber typhoons have stopped. If anything, I would imagine they have accelerated at different junctures. Thinking about what Deepak just said, what are the ways from your kind of official position that you work with the 20 million people in Taiwan to kind of build the digital literacy so that they're hopefully not susceptible kind of to those attacks, and also the civic awareness that they're not spending so much time online being susceptible to those attacks?
Yes, great question. I was reminded in 2019, we switched our basic education curriculum in Taiwan to prepare for a post-AI age. And so,
were you the first country in the world to do that?
I think so. We basically reasoned that anything that is routine will be, taken over by robots. And so what's remaining for humans to do is curiosity, collaboration, and civic care. And in that curriculum, we changed our words. It used to be literacy, media literacy, data literacy, digital literacy, and we switched away from saying literacy, which was consuming information with critical thinking, into competency. And so it's media competency, data competency. It is the primary schoolers measuring air quality and then informing together their parents whether to go to hike or not because of air pollution. It is the high schoolers doing real-time fact-checking on the 3 presidential candidates as they're having a debate, because we know that independently checked facts by vertical institutions such as journalism doesn't really move young people anymore. But if they go through the journalistic motions, and with their peers, so that they understand that, you have to balance the 2 sources and so on. That creates an inoculation effect that we call pre-bunking. And so this kind of media competency also meant that the young people demand that they set the national agenda way before they turn 18. So they went onto online platforms. They demand, for example, that they go to school 1 hour later in the day, because study shows that 1 more hour sleep gets you a better grade than 1 more hour study, and they did get it. So the 17-year-olds and the 70-year-olds formed this intergenerational unity, and we tapped them into reverse mentors, advisor to the cabinet, sometime even before they turn 18.
Well, I apologize for using an anachronistic term of kind of literacy instead of competency. Deepak, I saw you nodding while Audrey was speaking, and certainly while listening to Audrey was reflecting on something that you said, all of 10 minutes ago, and that one of the reasons Americans have lost trust in our democracy is the erosion of ways to participate and to have kind of tangible agency, to really feel like kind of energy and effort at least somewhat correlates to outputs and outcomes. Audrey just gave a stunning example of high school students, it sounds like, working with their grandparents to successfully campaign for starting school an hour later. Oh yeah, there are people in the audience applauding. What do you think that would look like here in the United States? What can you give us kind of in this audience today? And I know many of us, are not American, so feel free to cast also the net wider. How should we be kind of using that very clear, concise, powerful example as we're kind of imagining and thinking about what we want to do to strengthen our civil societies?
Yeah. We need in the United States a massive small d democratic revival. And, we are code red on democracy right now. Every indicator is pointing in the wrong direction. If we're looking at any other country, we would say we have had an autocratic breakthrough and we are now in a process of autocratic consolidation. The simplest thing that I ask the question of people is, do you feel free to state your opinion, even if it's unpopular or critical of those in power? And in more and more audiences I'm in, people say, no, I'm afraid. Everyday people say it, powerful people say it. So here's the lesson, I think, from our own history of democratic crises and from around the world. There are 2 ingredients that have to come together, and I think we don't have a ton of time, in order for this small d democratic revival to take place. First of all, we need the leaders of major institutions in society, universities, charities, businesses, media companies, journalists. We need these law firms, we need these institutions to actually stand up and take a stand for what's right, and we need them to do it now, not tomorrow. We're running out of time. And I say this not glibly, I say this as the leader of an institution that feels all the cross pressures. There's every incentive to put your head down and to try to not be the one that is targeted. But if all of us make that choice, we're done for. And our democracy is done for. And I want to point out that there are positive examples here. Last week, over 800 charities came together and unequivocally denounced political violence in this country, and also condemned the use of political violence to attack our basic fundamental constitutional freedoms and rights of free speech and association. We need to see more and more of that in America from our civic leaders, and all of us have a role in insisting on it from our friends, our peers, our coworkers, our leaders. That's one. Two, we need a mass democratic movement in this country. Institutions by themselves are not going to save us. So millions of people are going to have to find agency and find a pathway to take action. And we know the formula for that. We've been through this before in this country. It's going to take things like strategic non-cooperation. You think about the Montgomery bus boycott, or you think about the activity that led to Jimmy Kimmel coming back on air. We do know how to do this. You think about organizing people who are being harmed, whether it's scientists, students, veterans, people of faith. So many people are in the crosshairs here. They can be engaged on those everyday issues to make them better, that create a pathway to somewhere better. We also need to welcome people who are not already with us with open arms. There are so many people who are not with any program, who are ready to be invited in to be part of something. The last thing I'd say is we should not be trying to go back to a system that was not working for most people in this society. We need to go forward. The academic literature says 70% of the time when we have autocratic breakthroughs, there's a U-turn. We come back around the world to a democratic society, and sometimes it's more democratic than when we started. That should be our goal in this case.
I completely agree, Deepak. Thank you. Audrey, building on what Deepak said about inviting more people in, including people who at the moment don't possibly feel invited or included anywhere. I know you have written and spoken a lot about kind of finding the uncommon common ground. What do you mean by that? And how do you think technology can play a role in not only finding it, but nurturing it and sustaining it?
The uncommon ground stems from this idea that if you poll people individually, or if you just look at the extreme corners on social media, you may see that the most extreme ideas are like fire on the ground that threaten to explode. But there are ways to harness those conflicts into energy, like a combustion engine, so that if you put people in, say, small groups of 10, and only amplify the ideas that resonates across those 10 people, then suddenly you find the INBI or NIMBY energy become like MIMBY. Okay, maybe in my backyard, if you do this, if you do that. And so one very concrete, quick example. Last year, around March, Taiwan was hit by the wave of deepfake scam. Anywhere on Facebook or YouTube, if you scroll, you see Jensen Huang, our Taiwanese NVIDIA CEO, his likeness saying that he wants to give back to the Taiwanese by giving you free investment advice or crypto or something like that. And if you click it, Jensen actually talks to you. Of course, it's a deepfake running on NVIDIA GPU. And people did lose millions of dollars to these scams. But also, if you poll people individually, they say, oh, we don't want government overreach. We want freedom of expression. We're the most free in Asia in terms of internet freedom. So it looked like a cellmate. However, we sent 200,000 text messages from the trusted government number 111 asking people just one very simple question. What should we do about information integrity online? People gave us their ideas. And then thousands volunteer to participate in online alignment assemblies that we coordinate with CIP, the Collective Intelligence Project here in the US. And basically people in rooms of 10 start brainstorming. And the most resonating idea, for example, are saying all the advertisement should be displayed as probably scam until Jensen Huang or anybody signs off on it. One very good idea. Another room says, if somebody gets scammed $5 million out of investment scam, let's make Facebook liable for the full damage instead of just finding them. Another very good idea. Another says, oh, if a foreign, TikTok or other service that did not want to play by the rules and set up a local office, let's slow down connection to their video, but not censor them. Another very good idea. And so these ideas are the uncommon ground. That is assembled by language model. These rooms of 10, they're machine facilitated. So we can scale this out to like thousands or 100,000 of people. And then again, the pack of ideas that was agreed by more than 85% of people randomly selected to be representative of the Taiwanese population passed just last March to May to July. So within 4 months, we passed all the laws because we show the legislature, even though none of the three parties hold over 51 majority, they know that this is the people's will. And so this year, if you scroll in Taiwan, you don't see those deepfake ads anymore.
Wow. Audrey, thank you. Thank you for being so tangible. I think it's really helpful when oftentimes we talk about kind of democracy, understandably from a principled perspective in this country, given that, as we heard from Deepak, so many of those core principles and constitutionally enshrined rights are under threat. It is important also to focus on the pragmatic. In our last few minutes, I want to give each of you the chance to kind of share final reflections, something maybe that didn't come up that you want the audience to know about your work or kind of where your work may be going, or to give us another reason to be optimistic. Maybe Deepak, we'll start with you, and then Audrey.
So I think one of the challenges for our sector, for charitable organizations, for philanthropy, is we are going to need to create the on-ramps for millions of people to come in to revitalize our democracy. And I think that's going to mean a little bit of a culture change for us, which I think we can do. Instead of just being focused on expertise, making the case, research reports, we're going to have to be in neighborhoods, in rural communities, listening to people, not just trying to get people invested in what we already think may be the solution to a problem. That kind of grassroots outreach is something that the civil society sector in this country has historically done. We can return to those roots. And I see it happening all over the country, in rural North Carolina, in upstate New York, in parts of this country you wouldn't expect, that neighbors are coming to rally with each other and for each other. We are a good and compassionate country. There is a wellspring of decency in this country that can be tapped. It's up to us to go do it.
Yeah, first of all, 100%. In 2016, when I stepped into the cabinet as digital minister, in Taiwan, 数位 means both digital and also plural, so I was also the minister for pluralism. And I wrote a very short poem as my job description, which I will quickly recite for you here. It goes like this. When we see Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of Beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. When we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. And whenever we hear that a singularity is near, let's always remember the plurality is here. Thank you.
What a perfect note to end on. Thank you both so much. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining us for Day 1 of the Clinton Global Initiative. Please join us at America's Hall 1 for our attendee reception.